Hello, I will evaluate whether charter school governance protocols include an assessment of how the public perceives their mission of providing public education. Is this a significant area of concern for charter school governance boards? Also, we'll assess whether charter schools include parent and community perspectives in their governance and creation of curriculums for students. This is important because charter schools tend to be governed by not-for-profit and for-profit boards that are not public in nature in the traditional sense. It's important because charter schools still provide a significant public service. According to a recent Gallup poll, the public's perception of the charter school education model has improved significantly. In 2002, less than 50% of the population surveyed felt that the charter school model was favorable. However, in 2014, approximately 70% of the individuals polled felt that the charter school model was favorable. This is consistent with the postmodern perspective of individuality and being flexible and adaptable to individual needs. Charter schools propose that by having less regulatory obligations as traditional public schools, they can better manage their resources in terms of curriculum planning, teacher support staff, and teacher performance evaluations. That allows them to help students prepare for the adjusting market trends, and they can be more flexible to the needs of society. However, charter schools still have a fiduciary obligation to the citizenry because they provide that significant public service of education. Our research has shown, however, that the governance standards and priorities of the charter schools still tend to be internally focused to their board and significant donors. Charter schools should try to collaborate more with the community and with parents in particular regarding the educational needs of students in the communities that they serve, as this will provide a more meaningful educational experience for students. As we indicated, charter schools do have to balance the needs of their internal organization, as is traditional with a nonprofit or for-profit organization that tend to focus on organizational goals and objectives. However, public interest is important when you're providing such a significant public service as education. They do need to consider the needs of the community and their parents. Charter schools have indicated that because they're less bureaucratic, they can be adaptable and flexible to the external perspectives, so they should welcome the feedback. In addition, unique education needs in some communities are necessary. For example, when charter schools operate in areas where there's high immigration populations, that understanding of cultural and value norms is important in informing the teacher on how to communicate some of their material so that there isn't misconceptions or miscommunication. This promotes a better learning environment for the students. Charter schools are also partially funded by public funds, as well as located in public spaces similar to public schools. They're sometimes located in the same building. So the public absolutely has a right to know how these funds are being supported. However, research has shown that the public feels that there is not as much transparency as is needed by the charter schools. Typically, charter school governance structures, according to our research, tends to focus on the internal goals and objectives. A recent study conducted by Carpenter and Peak showed that charter school leaders who were surveyed and participated in focus groups feel that their priorities are around standard setting and building community within the school. They also focused on hiring staff, motivating teachers. The lower levels of influence that they felt they needed to focus on was building parental involvement and building community outside of the school. This is ironic because some of the proponents of charter schools state that they respond to market trends better than traditional public schools. But how can this be done if the priorities felt by these leaders is not around looking externally? Another study conducted by a comparison of Midwest public school districts operated by the district and public school district operated by charters identified a similar trend, where there is less emphasis on listening to the public and responding to community input. The board focuses on the daily operational needs as well as fiscal management and strategic planning. They believe that the accountability measures that have been established for them through their school charters are sufficient evidence of them meeting their public service needs. However, as we learn, the governance protocols on a legislative basis does not necessarily meet ethical guidelines and the public perception. Public's perceptions are value-based, and societal needs are not necessarily met by strictly regulations. We believe that the national sentiment has also been changing to allow for more than just quantitative measures. The objectives of public education is tending to focus more on social mobility and citizenship participation. Therefore, public education organizations such as charter schools need to look beyond just statistical metrics. According to an Annenberg study, the transparency needs to improve significantly. Only 10 states require parent-teacher representation on charter school governing boards. And this has shown to have a detriment in terms of the education learning environment. Parent community engagement initiatives have been tried since the 1960s. In that early time, there tended to be failures in terms of allowing for community voices to be heard in the 1960s because conflicts of interest still occurred. Even though the school government did not manage these community school boards, there were still conflicts of interest due to significant individuals having influence on those boards. Over time, conflict of interest issues have been mitigated, and so there is awareness that there needs to be more democratic processes. However, I believe charter schools can take lessons from the district schools in terms of potentially negative and positive ways of engaging parents. According to a recent study conducted by the Kettering Foundation and the Public Agenda Organization, when you implement parent engagement policies that are more dictatorial, whereas parents are told this is what you need to do as a parent, it makes the parents feel more shut out of the process, and they feel that their avenues for participation and comment are not valid. This can be seen in the example of the One Newark initiative led by Cami Anderson and Cory Booker. There was very little turnaround time for parents to voice their opinions on the One Newark plan, which was very extensive. And when school closures occurred due to the lack of performance, parents did not have significant lead time to identify how their children could be reassigned to other schools. It led them to feel that the government was being discriminatory of district schools compared to charter schools, where there was not the same treatment. According to Peter Turnmanian, who is the founder of the Greater New York Charter School Organization, research has shown that poorly performing charter schools tended not to close at the pace of district schools, and reformers and politicians did not encourage closures because of conflicts due to cronyism and political influence. This led to the One Newark organization filing a lawsuit with the Department of Education, which was later resolved in late 2015. One example where engagement with the parents is more authentic and more collaborative and gives more time for feedback is with the New York City Parent Academy. Not only is the Parent Academy set up for feedback and influence, New York City also has an extensive process called Parent Education Councils, where individuals are petitioned, they are democratically voted in onto these parent councils, and they sit in an advisory capacity and advise the school boards throughout the year on what are the influences that they need to consider from a community perspective. This is a positive example of community engagement, and it involves the person-situation interactionist model. School administrators and politicians have a very different organizational context. When they're looking at trying to balance funding constraints, lackluster performance, parents, on the other hand, are concerned of the access to education and consistency. So therefore, this has to be considered when you're engaged in collaborative relationships. These methods of parent engagements, including parent voice, parent presence, and co-framing, they support those methods of developing a stronger baseline communication mechanism between parents and teachers. There are assumptions that come into play when you're looking at context and situations and values and perspectives in terms of what does a child need and how best does a child thrive. So part of the process of building community and building governance protocols is focusing on that communication between those different stakeholders and taking the time to level set what are those individual expectations and how can they move forward together as a group. As a result of this, I've created a feedback stakeholder model, which emphasizes the internal school charter standards as well as parent community engagement standards. You still have the significant metric of making sure the child is achieving academically and the teachers are being evaluated in terms of the internal feedback, as well as the regulatory standards set by the school charter. But you have better engagement with the teachers in this model and more deliberate engagement. And as a result, these findings can help the school identify additional resources. For example, if the school wants to engage in internships or bilingual support, they can leverage the feedback from the parents as well as community organizations. The following is an example of how effective teacher engagement with students and parents help.
I needed a school that appealed to me from where they came from. I needed a school that could push my kids and that they could grow and innovate and create and love. And being a parent, I needed a school I could love for them and with them. And with Thrive, everything happens. They're creative and innovative and robotics and you name it, they're getting to do it. It is totally the future school.
After 2 years in operation, Thrive was listed as one of the top 65 public schools in the country. And this is definitely in part to their collaborative and innovative approach with engaging their community in helping their students learn. So, in summary, as a result of better alignment with the public interest and utilizing that moral compass as opposed to just the strict government regulatory compass, these charter schools can provide a better, meaningful public service of providing education to students. As an example of the big picture, I've included the New York City's Children First school reform initiative, where it shows the comprehensive nature of engaging in public education. Thank you.